Pacifism would actually work if practiced by the Palestinians against Israel. There is no way that Israel could resist a Gandhian-style campaign of nonviolence.
Apparently, he does not remember the Great March of Return that happened, like, what, 4 years ago?
Of course, it's true that the Israeli Defense Forces have killed a lot of innocent people in Gaza.
Oh, is it?
However, it's also true that if the IDF wanted to kill every person in Gaza next week, that is, actually commit genocide, it could.
He pretends as if you don't kill everyone, then it's not genocide. Like, if the Nazis didn't do genocide because they didn't kill every Jew. It is so dumb, so aggressively dumb to say clearly the IDF is not committing genocide because they haven't murdered every Palestinian. It is so disgusting. At one point, he actually gives the definition of genocide as being the effort to kill all or a part of a people. So he actually acknowledges that it could just be the effort is to kill a part of a people. You don't have to kill everyone for it to be genocide. And he acknowledges that, but then later he just ignores that and says the IDF hasn't killed everyone. So that's not a genocide. There's still 12 people left. The dictionary definition of genocide, as posted at the Holocaust Memorial Fund's website, it has to do with trying to eliminate a people, trying to ethnically cleanse a people, trying to move them all out. You don't have to murder every single person for it to be genocide. If you want to murder a segment of a people just because of who they are, just because they live in Gaza, just because they're Palestinians, then that is genocide. There are many Israeli ministers, higher-ups, who have actually used genocidal talking points, such as we're going to turn it into a parking lot, no Gazans are innocent. Netanyahu actually referenced the Bible story about how they should have killed everyone because by leaving any of them alive, you're allowing them to come back later. Netanyahu actually referenced a Bible story about how the goal is to kill everyone.
If the IDF wanted to kill every person in Gaza next week, that is, actually commit genocide, it could. But of course, it doesn't want to do that and has never wanted to do that. In fact, the Israeli army routinely drops leaflets and broadcasts on the radio and calls cell phone to alert Palestinian civilians when specific areas will be bombed.
I feel like even he almost cracked up there. In fact, the IDF, which has killed 30,000 people, that's not counting those missing in the rubble, so really it's well over 30,000 people, 70% of them women and children. I feel like even he is about to laugh when he says dropped leaflets. They've killed 30,000 people, but they dropped leaflets. Do you hear yourself as you justify genocide? Can you, like, are the things working? Because you heard what you just said, right? Honestly, this is one of the best comedy sketches I've ever heard if it wasn't a real genocide. If this were a fake thing that was on SNL, I'd be like, this is the most solid writing I've heard from them in 40 years. I don't know if you've ever heard of a description of what it's like when they so-called alert these people. First of all, some of the leaflets they drop, a lot of the leaflets they've dropped said to flee to places like Khan Yunis and Rafah, which are now being bombed and have been attacked. So basically, the leaflets that he's referring to told them to go to places where they were then bombed. But beyond that, in one example, you've got an apartment building with hundreds of apartments, right? Or 100 apartments or something. So this is, 1,000 people. And one guy that the IDF has decided should get the call, gets a call, and they say, we're going to bomb your apartment building in an hour. You should get everyone out. So this person, first of all, has to decide whether it's real, because there are a lot of prank callers, sadly, Israelis who find it funny to do this kind of thing. But even if they decide it's real, now they have 1 hour to try and get out of this apartment building of civilians, as many people as they can. And they run around going, listen, you have to trust me. I got a phone call. We got to get the F out of here. And so, yeah, maybe they get a bunch of people out. But guess what? They can't get everyone. There's old people. There's people that can't come down the stairs. There's people that don't get the message. There's people that don't believe this guy running up and down the hall saying, get out, get out. There's people who believed him, believed people in a couple hours ago, and then the apartment building wasn't bombed, and so they figure this is just bullshit. There's so many reasons why not everyone can get out of these buildings. But then Israel bombed. So the idea that, they were trying to avoid civilians, there you go. No, they're trying to give themselves cover so they can say, look, we tried as we murder all the civilians. I didn't even get into the fact that where do you want them to go? They can't leave. Gaza is a prison. Yeah, they can go south where they're then bombed in the south. But okay, so let's jump to, he's talking about how Israel can't allow Palestinians to build up their society, because they would do awful things, right? If you let Palestinians just be free, then they would do terrible things, because they just can't handle freedom. By the way, in part one of this, I talk about how he says they're not civilized, they're not ordinary people. It's like Christopher Columbus level of racist garbage. I mean, it's amazing to hear someone still vomiting up Christopher Columbus talking points, but here we are.
As nuclear proliferation is in every other context, and just think how bonkers things are with North Korea. North Korea has nuclear weapons, and they've also built ICBMs, though their accuracy is still debatable, and they have threatened to bomb the United States.
Okay, so the fact that he brings up North Korea and has no self-awareness as to why that would be an interesting one to bring up, why that might prove the opposite of his point. North Korea, a big part of the reason why it is the way it is, which is nuclear armed and was, threatening to use them, is largely because the U.S. murdered a fifth, maybe more like a fourth of their people. This is coming from the Wilson Center. They're saying new evidence reveals North Korea lost at least 20% of its population during the Korean War. If you read about the Korean War, literally U.S. military generals were saying there was nothing left to bomb. They had bombed everything. They had destroyed every structure. They had killed as many people as they could kill. And they couldn't find structures above that of like a thatched house left to bomb. So he brings up the example of a nation that was utterly destroyed by the United States. And he goes, see, they're dangerous. Has North Korea killed more people outside North Korea, or has the U.S. killed more North Koreans? I think we've killed more North Koreans. I think we're the ones who are the lunatics with the bombs. Because his whole point in this is you can't let the Palestinians get bombs, especially nuclear bombs, because they are lunatics. And he points to a country that literally the U.S. bombed into oblivion. Nothing clicks in his head. Does this prove my point? Does this prove my point that the U.S. is the rational one and North Korea is the insane one? Or does this actually prove the reverse? It's a beautiful stew of breathtaking stupidity with intelligent manipulation. When you get those into a nice big pot and you stir it up, it really is something to behold. A quarter of their people we killed. Other examples of how unhinged the U.S. is. This is from Salon. The U.S. drops, and Salon is a liberal outlet. The U.S. drops an average of 46 bombs a day. That was in 2022. They put this article out. 46 bombs a day. I calculated once, and I think it might have been a year or two before 2022, and it was a bomb every 12 minutes the U.S. was dropping. And Sam Harris wants you to just go, well, the U.S. is a force for good, right? And so we just drop liberty bombs. We just drop justice bombs that are caring, loving bombs. And the other side, if Palestinians were to get a bomb, they would do bad things with us. Whereas we do really noble, just things as we drop a bomb every few minutes. Let's go back to the racist Bob Ross. Nice, smooth, easy listening. Bob Ross, if he wanted to murder tens of thousands of people.
The Palestinians in Gaza have received more international aid than almost any community on Earth. They could have built a Singapore on the Mediterranean. In fact, if they were pacifists, they would already have a state.
They could have built a Singapore. They received so much aid. Oh my goodness, they could have built Singapore. He seems to forget that, or choose to ignore the fact that Gaza is an open-air prison of refugees. Yes, they get a lot of aid because they are kept in a permanent position of borderline starving, where Israel said they were putting them on a diet to give them less than the minimum number of calories to survive. They're kept at a level of collapse a perfect level of economic collapse, of health collapse, all those things, which is where Israel has wanted them. Israel does not want them to be able to thrive or succeed in any way. Israel would regularly go in and bomb all kinds of things and call it mowing the grass, right? Leveling the society, killing a certain number of people. Israel has no interest, even before October 7th, Israel has no interest of letting them build their society up to something that, they could be a Singapore. No, they're not allowed to bring in but certain construction equipment, certain construction materials. Israel dictates how much food they get, how much medicine they get. He acts like, they just waste it all. We've tried to let them build Singapore and they won't. It's all bullshit. It ignores the entire past of how we got here. And he does throughout this whole thing, he pretends that the history of all Palestinians began on October 7th. Like Gazans weren't living in an open air prison before October 7th. Anyway, let me play the rest of this clip.
Pacifism would actually work if practiced by the Palestinians against Israel. There is no way that Israel could resist a Gandhian-style campaign of nonviolence.
Apparently, he does not remember the Great March of Return that happened 4 years ago, 6 years ago, maybe just a few years ago. Thousands of Gazans walked towards the border fence without guns, without bombs, and they were shot. They were picked off. The Israeli snipers took out medics, took out elderly, waving flags, took out children, shot Red Crescent members. This was people without guns. This was the opposite of October 7th. So they legit did what he claims would just work. All they had to do was be peaceful and walk towards the fence. And then Israel would go, oh my God, we forgot. We should treat you so much better. God, how did we forget that? They did it. They were shot. They were killed. Okay? And he's ignoring all of the reality in order to try and justify this genocide, which, takes a lot of work. It does. It takes to try and make a genocide seem okay, seem like it's just, they don't really mean to try and murder everybody. It just looks that way. Okay, I'm going to play one more clip. This is just right after I cut it off.
But generally speaking, they are a culture of religious fanatics, ruled by absolute fanatics.
Oh, they're religious fanatics? Well, what are the people bombing children and saying it's okay because God's on their side? Those aren't religious fanatics?
Why aren't you calling for Hamas to release the hostages? And why don't you remember that there was a ceasefire on October 6th? The truth that we cannot lose sight of is that Hamas has deliberately engineered the chaos on both sides of the Gaza border.
Oh, so good. Why aren't you calling for the release of the hostages? Well, first of all, plenty of people are calling for the release of the hostages. But, Sam, let me ask you this, buddy. Why aren't you calling for the release of the 5,000 Palestinian hostages that Israel had in their cells, in their prisons before October 7th? Before October 7th, Israel had 5,000 roughly Palestinians, many of them children, in prisons. I don't hear you. I'm sorry. Did you call for the release? Because I haven't heard you call for the release. But again, he wants you to believe that October 7th started history. All history began October 7th. He also wants you to ignore that not only did Israel have 5,000 before October 7th, Israel has since then grabbed up another 5,000 roughly hostages or more. So they have now 10,000 hostages. Why is he not calling for the release? Why are you not asking for them to be released, Sam? I don't understand. He wants you to believe that Hamas started all of this, that it all began on October 7th, as if they weren't living in an open-air prison before October 7th, as if there weren't 5,000 hostages before October 7th, as if Israel wasn't murdering children and medics and press and bombing and stopping medical supplies from getting in and starving them before October 7th. Israel's genocide has sped up, but it did not start October 7th. And it's unbelievable that anyone believes his hit show that he is putting out there. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up there, but if you enjoyed this one, you would enjoy all the others of my destroying the garbage coming out of our mainstream media and people like Sam Harris